And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another tremendous installment from very high above all the insipid and puerile forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Election Day 2026.
I always wonder if you're firmly ensconced, what am I?
I don't know, kind of stuck there.
Okay.
Not even really stuck. I mean, just kind of floating over there somewhere.
In the etherealness.
That's true. Welcome to the program, my friends. Cowboy State Politics live on this Election Day 2026. If you haven't voted already, which, I mean, you've only had an hour to vote. What the heck are you waiting for? But if you haven't voted today, make sure that you make a plan to go do so.
Yeah, make a plan, because the option is to turn Wyoming blue. All you got to do that is
not vote.
Just stay home.
Yeah, well, and don't do that. You know, Democrats get elected when Republicans do nothing in Wyoming. And, you know, this is a big election in a number of different ways, both at the federal level. I think there's an important race there. Actually, I mean, there's two of them.
Yeah, there's a couple, and this is the first time in many years that we've had a senator and a representative both in the same window.
Yeah, you've got the House race, the Senate race, and then here at home, there are a lot of really important races that are going on. And so we're going to cover some of those today. I'm going to keep the phone lines open all program long. So if you want to be part of the show, the phone number here in the studio is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989.
And if you don't want to be part of the show, you're helping turn Colorado blue.
This is true.
Wyoming blue. See, I'm used to the old.
Oh, boy. Yeah. Anyway, so if you want to call in, phone lines are open, and I'll get Ken to put the phone number up on the screen for you, so you don't even have to remember what the phone number is.
BR549.
Yes, something like that. So lots of different stories. There's a couple of things in the Sheridan mess that we should probably talk about, and there's a couple of great articles on the Open Range Record, and that's where we're going to start this morning. Don Marquardt has a piece out entitled, "Does Grassroots Actually Mean Grassroots?" Now, every candidate running for office, and maybe not so much at the local level, but certainly at the state level and definitely at the federal level, every candidate wants you to believe that all of their supporters are just like you, that all of them are just, it's a grassroots movement. And, this is just bubbling up from the bottom. There's no other outside influences on this. And why do they do that? Because it's easier for you to identify with people you think are just like you. And so if a candidate can say, hey, look, I've raised all this money, but the majority of it came in small, and this is why you hear the phrase small dollar donations from just around everybody. Well, the reason why they say things like that is if it's a small dollar donation, in your brain, it says, well, hey, anybody could throw $20 at a candidate. And that's the impression that they want to leave you. But when you start digging into the numbers, and this is actually, there's a great parallel to what's going on in Sheridan County right now, or I guess what has gone on. So we're going to talk about both of those. But let's begin with the open range record. Marquardt says, and I quote, campaigns can buy television commercials, mailers, consultants, and digital advertising. What they cannot simply purchase is someone who believes enough to cook the food, set up the chairs, open a building, drive across the state, knock on a door, put up a sign, or bring a neighbor along. Follow the smaller dollars, follow where they come from, and a very different picture of Wyoming's race for governor begins to emerge. Political campaigns love the word grassroots. Everybody wants to be grassroots. But rather than simply accepting the label, perhaps Wyoming voters should try to measure it. And she says there are 3 ways that she thinks you can do that. 1, where does the money come from? 2, how much comes from small individual contributors rather than large checks? And how much comes from people contributing something besides money? Their time, mileage, food, lodging, those sorts of things. So, Ken, just before we get going here, you've had a couple of, campaign events. You go to a lot of them. How much money, if you had to pay for it, do you think a candidate would spend in just prep work, setting up, an event, the chairs, the food, all that? How much do you think you would spend?
Well, depending on the venue, are we stopping at a bar for a meet and greet, or are we hosting something in a hotel?
Right.
But if you're going to have, let's say, 4 or 5 people spend a day setting it up, taking it down, what's somebody worth in a day? $100, $200?
Exactly.
It adds up very quickly.
Well, and I think you bring up a good point that, and maybe I think it's actually more than that, because, most people, $10 an hour is really, that's kind of chump change. You might just say, screw that, I'll go fishing. Not to say if you make $10 an hour that's insignificant, but to get somebody to work, you're probably talking $15, $20 an hour times 10 hours for the whole event. And one person can't do it all by themselves. So you've got 3 or 4. And then all the food on top of it.
Yeah.
And the numbers add up pretty quickly.
The thing about volunteers is the enthusiasm.
Yeah.
You had a phone call, which I thought was hysterical. My opponent, calling on behalf of my opponent.
Yeah.
asking if you were going to vote for her, and insinuating that myself and the rest of the Freedom Caucus are a bunch of criminals.
Yeah.
And you challenged him, and he had nothing. There was no skin off his nose. He's going to get paid one way or the other.
Right.
He had no way to defend it. He didn't know anything. He didn't know either one of us. He's just reading from a script.
In fact, you know what? We should probably listen to that.
Well, that's up to you. But
I think so. I don't see any reason why we shouldn't. We're at the end of a political campaign, right? The gloves are off. It's not like I'm really going to support anybody
it was
you.
humorous.
All right, so let me just find it here. Here it is. Okay, so we're going to play it off my machine, Ken.
Yeah.
Here we go. Just take a listen.
Hi, my name is Lewis in support of Melissa Butcher for State Senate. Melissa stands with Wyoming's core industries, will stop the Freedom Caucus corruption, and fight for Wyoming families at the State House.
Okay, so hold on. So I got to set the stage for you. So the phone call came in, and I didn't get it. The lovely Christine got a voicemail from it. So she sends the voicemail to me, and it is exactly what you just heard. That's we're supporting Melissa Butcher. She's going to stop the Freedom Caucus corruption. So yesterday, I called them back, and this is what happened.
But my wife also called them back.
What did Diane have to say?
Among other things, she called them a liar.
Among other things.
It didn't do any good, I'm sure, but it made her feel better.
I'm sure it did. All right. So here is what transpired when I called these people back.
Melissa Butcher, count on your vote in the August 18th Republican primary.
Actually, I have a couple of questions about Melissa Butcher.
Okay.
So first, who is paying for this operation? Crickets.
What do you mean?
Well, who is paying you to, answer and make phone calls
Sorry,
on Melissa Butcher's behalf?
You're breaking up.
I'm sorry, you broke up there. I didn't catch what you said.
I said, who is paying for you to make and receive phone calls on Melissa Butcher's behalf?
I do not know.
Okay.
I don't know where the money's coming from.
Okay. So who is it that you work for?
I work for Triton Research.
Okay, great. Can you tell me anything specifically about Melissa Butcher? What is the corruption that you're referring to?
Well, you can learn more from our website.
No, I've read her website, but your company is the one that called me. So what is the corruption?
Right. We're just doing get out to vote calls.
Is that all that it is? Right. But you're essentially accusing somebody of a crime, and so I'm curious what that corruption actually is.
Okay. As I said, if you need more information, you can check out our website, but I don't have any information to give you.
Okay, so you're accusing people of a crime with zero information. That's what you're telling me?
I'm calling to ask if Melissa Butcher can count on your vote in the August 18th Republican primary.
Right, but that's not what your message said. Your message said she'll stop the Freedom Caucus corruption. And so I'm asking you, what is that corruption?
As I said, I don't have any further information. You can check out our website if you'd like. I can give you that web address.
Oh, I'm well aware of it. So you said you worked for Trident Communications. Did I hear that correctly?
Sure. Yes.
Okay.
That's
now,
funny because
who
I
is your
think he actually
supervisor?
said Trident Research.
I think he probably did too. Yeah. So, I mean, he's not going to really tell you
No.
anything, but here's the rest of it.
Okay. So can Melissa Butcher count on your vote in the August 18th Republican primary? I can't sit on the phone for hours talking to you.
And so you're not going to answer any of my questions.
You're not answering any of mine.
Okay, so the only one you want is can Melissa Butcher count on my vote? No,
Yes.
I don't vote for people who falsely accuse others of crimes.
Okay. Thank you for your time. Have a great day.
All right, so you're just going to hang up on me. He hung up on me. The best part of that phone call is he hung up on me.
Yeah.
But the point is that these folks that are calling you, and I don't really care on whose behalf they're calling you. They don't know anything about what they're telling you. The only thing they're doing is reading off of a script. And so you shouldn't place any stock in any of those, really. And honestly, it doesn't matter if it's for a conservative or if it's for a redcoat or a Democrat. You know, none of these people in a phone bank really have any idea about what they're talking about.
Nor do the candidates have anything to do with it.
That is probably
You
true.
know, the ones going around for me, yeah, I'm grateful somebody's throwing the name out there and not using it as a swear word. But, you know, I'm described as a Trump Republican. I think anybody that knows me pretty well knows that that's not the case.
Yeah, you've been
I
kind of
appreciate-
critical of the big
Yeah,
guy.
I appreciate some of the things that Trump has done, but I've also had some criticisms. But it's neither here nor there. It's just, it's more of the same.
But you know, a lot of this, and I think this applies to most of the political advertisements you're getting in the mail. You know, I've got a stack. I looked at it this morning. That stack of mailers is about this thick, and the people sending them out. What happened is a candidate paid some marketing firm to print these flyers and mail them out. And the people behind it don't have any idea who Ken or Melissa Butcher or any of the others really are, nor do they care. It's all about money for them. And I can tell you there is a tremendous amount of money that goes around in campaigns, some of which we're going to talk about later on in the program. But, you know, when you question them, no, they don't have any other information other than we're going to stop the Freedom Caucus corruption. But pay attention to that word. And this is what yesterday's podcast was all about. You know, the phone call says stop the Freedom Caucus corruption. Okay. When you hear the word corruption, the connotations that go along with that word are somebody has committed a crime. If you have corruption, it necessarily means that somebody is involved. The person involved in it is corrupt. That's what that means. And if you're corrupt, it means that you committed a crime. You're in some way untoward. You've done something wrong. Well, none of these folks that are, you know, claiming that the Freedom Caucus is corrupt or that any one legislator is, none of them have any evidence. It's just a slur.
Yeah, if you look at Checkgate, which is probably what they're trying to dredge up, that's what they do in the pictures,
Yeah.
the flyers.
Yeah.
I got flyers saying there that I was involved because I stood by and said nothing. And
Yeah.
frankly, the truth is I did stand up and I said
Yeah,
there
you-
was a problem. I
Yes, you
said there
did.
were two people that broke rules here, and only two people that broke rules, and they were Mike and Carly.
Mark Yen and Carly Provenza. It's all politics, man, and all of it is
It's
dirty.
politics, but it's worse than it's lower than that. I mean, the attacks that come against us. Very seldom does anybody want to talk policy. Nobody
Right.
wants to talk about, okay, what did you actually accomplish? What are the merits? What are the dangers of lowering property taxes? They don't want to talk those issues, at least not honestly.
No.
They will try to tell you, I heard the other day that the senior center here in Wyoming is going to have to stop the senior bus because of the Freedom Caucus.
None of that is true.
And it's asinine. It's all.
But I
Anyway,
think you bring up a good
but it
point,
doesn't
Ken,
matter. Yeah.
that the left attacks people. The right and we do the same thing on occasion, but many of us on the right try to attack policy. There's a difference, and I'm not saying that either side is innocent in any of this, because none of them are. But try to discern the difference between a personal attack and a policy attack. And I don't mean political. I mean, it's all politics. But what I'm saying is, if your candidate is just telling you that their opponent is bad, that's attacking a person. It's not attacking a policy. And what you should deduce from that is that same behavior is going to translate down to Cheyenne or to the U.S. House. And, I read an article the other day in which Harriet Hageman was quoted by saying, typically the tactics that are used in a campaign, those are the same tactics that are going to follow them wherever they go, whether it's to Cheyenne or if it's to Washington, D.C. That same type of behavior is going to continue. All right, so let's get back to the article. We got way off with the phone call, but
Sorry. Kind of.
no, it's good.
Kind of sorry.
It's election day, and
It is.
all of us are kind of. I know I'm frazzled. I've had enough. I need about 2 weeks off.
Yeah.
I know you've had enough. So
Yeah, and I will be, since you said it, I will be taking at least a week off. We're going to go play with the grandkids for a while.
I think you should probably do that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if they'll
just-
still speak to us.
Yeah, that's another issue. All right, so back to the article that's in the Open Range Record. So Marquardt says, let's start with individual contributions of $500 or less. On sheer volume, Eric Barlow wins this, hands down. Across the reports that we reviewed, Barlow raised approximately $349,000 from contributions of $500 or less. BN raised approximately $58,000 through contributions of that size, while Meganfelder showed approximately 40 grand. And so, I mean, isn't that interesting that the guy leading all the polls, or at least that's what we're led to believe, he raised over almost $350,000 in donations of $500 or less. That's a huge number. And if we do a little math, let's see here, 350 divide by, we'll just say 500. So that means he got 700 donations of $500. And the likelihood that they were all 500 is probably pretty low. It was probably a combination of, here's $250 here, here's $100 there. Now, she says Barlow deserves credit for that. He clearly has a substantial grassroots participation. However, BN's number deserves a second look. Despite Meganfelder's seven-figure campaign, BN actually raised approximately $18,000 more than Meganfelder on individual contributions of $500 or less. The percentages make the contrast even clearer. For every $1 raised from individual contributors, approximately 45 cents of BN's came from contributions of $500 or less. For Barlow, it was about 28 cents, and for Meganfelder, it was 11 cents. And so, looking at the percentages, the question is, who really has like an actual grassroots campaign? And I don't think that you could discount the largesse of Barlow's campaign. I mean, it's clearly very big. I mean, you don't really have to go too far in the state to see that he did a good job on the ground. Now, contribution size is only half the equation. This is a race for Wyoming governor, so we will also need to know how much of the individual money was coming from Wyoming. And this is an important number here. Approximately 97% of Brent Behan's individual contributions came from Wyoming addresses. For Barlow, the figure was 86%. And for Meganfelder, that number was 68%. So, who is getting the most money from Wyoming? Now, I think that's important. I think that you do want most of your donations to be from people that live here. However, what does that say about a candidate that gets donations from somewhere else? Montana, Colorado, Idaho, wherever. Does that say anything about it? Now, I don't think so unless it's a majority of the donation. Now, just because somebody gets a donation from, say, Jackson, that doesn't necessarily mean that that person represents Jackson. In fact, the only thing that it means is somebody in Jackson says, I like how this guy governs. I like the policies that he supports. That's really all that says.
And you have to bear in mind through all of this, it doesn't really matter where the money came from, in that you still have to have the votes of your district, your area, whatever it is, your county. You have to win the election.
Right. Now, if you, and maybe this is a good time to go through this. So if you look at and let me just, you know what, Ken, before I get into this, let's take our first break, and when we come back, we'll dig into this, because it's going to take me a little bit longer to go through this whole thing. So back in a minute. Go get a cup of coffee. Don't change the channel, or the website, or the webpage, whatever it is. See you in a minute. Are you sick to death of being told what to think? Maybe you don't even realize that it's happening. Freedom Caucus bad, big spending, big government, liberal, Republican good. Conservatives are bad and they want to starve little children. I have heard it all, my friends. We are way past the time when the news was just the news, if it ever was. But wouldn't it be nice if you had a news platform that was at least honest about what they were telling you? News on the news page, opinion on the opinion page. That's exactly what the Open Range Record is. Go to the website, openrangerecord.com. News, analysis, opinion, and investigative journalism. One more time, that website is openrangerecord.com.
I'm completely fed up with the ongoing, unnecessarily high increases in property taxes, and I bet you are too. I'm Carla Cayley, and I'm running for county commissioner. Let me tell you why. I want lower property taxes for all property owners. Tax reform is possible without compromising essential county services, which is the only reason local government exists in the first place. Think about it. Do you have any more or any better essential services today than you had 5 years ago when your taxes were about 40% lower? Right. You get it. Your tax dollars are being spent on more than just essential services. We're already paying around 70 mills in taxes. That's right, 70 mills, which is a lot. I am pro-citizen, pro-business, and pro-taxpayer. Without compromising any essential services, together we can lower taxes for all of Sheridan County. I'm Carla Cayley, and I'm asking for your vote on August 18th. Paid for by the committee to elect Carla Cayley.
You can listen and watch Cowboy State Politics live on YouTube, Facebook, X, and on Rumble every Tuesday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pay attention to all that other block-headed, Borg-like so-called news if you want. But if you want to get the real story, watch Cowboy State Politics live. And now, back to the program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on this primary election day, 2026. If you haven't voted yet, make sure that you've got a plan to do that. The lovely Christine and I are going to go vote directly after this program. It's the thing that we do. We go vote together. Elections are any type of elections.
Where's your polling place?
At the Chevy dealership over by the theater. Yeah. Which I will not be purchasing. I probably won't be purchasing a vehicle from them, by the way. Anyway, we go vote together, and it's just I don't know. It's kind of one of our weird things. You know, we like watching debates. We like watching election results, and that's just one of the things that we do.
We usually do that as well. This time, however, Diane voted yesterday because she's down at Calvary Baptist as a poll watcher down there in the other
Good
district.
for her, by the way.
So, yeah, that's 12 hours of sitting there not being really allowed to talk to anybody.
And that's another thing. When you go vote, make sure that you're nice to everybody that's in there, because there are all but like one or two of them are all volunteer people, and they're there doing their civic duty. And okay, so if there's a mix-up with the poll book or something, or they don't have your address right, just have a little grace, okay? Most of those people are just
they're not the ones that screwed it up.
Yeah, exactly right. And they're there, on their own dime, on their own time, and they're just volunteering. So just be as nice as you possibly can. So we were talking about...
Unless it's Gail Simmons.
I got something for you, Gail. Come talk to me. Anyway, we're talking about campaign donations, and there's this rotten letter to the editor in the Sheridan Mess by, and I don't even want to mention this moron's name. By the way, Darren Rogers, why don't you step out from behind your keyboard and come on the program? Let's you and I sit down and talk, pal. I've had an open invitation to him for, I don't know, months, but he's still hasn't come back and said, yeah, let's do it. So, coward. All right. So the letter to the editor, he says that Teton County there's Teton County puppets, and it's you, Agent 29, Representative Jennings, and James Temple. All right. Where are your strings? No marionette strings.
I'll respond to that later.
Okay, fair enough. He says candidates for political office are required to report their campaign contributions and expenditures. The information is public. 3 local candidates, Mr. Ken Pendergraft, Mr. Mark Jennings, and Mr. James Temple, all Wyoming Republican platform candidates, reported significant campaign contributions from donors in Teton County. Agent 29, you got $10,000 worth of contributions, or 67.9%. So says Darren Rogers.
I consider that a feather in my cap.
Yes, I would too. Mr. Jennings raised $6,000 coming from Jackson, and James Temple got $6,000 also coming from Jackson. And he says the candidates' reported expenditures also show limited spending in Sheridan County businesses for campaign materials, including literature, flyers, signs, and printing. Money from Jackson or Teton County includes contributions raised.
Maybe because the local print shop
is outrageously expensive.
Not just that. When the old one was there down on Caffeine, I bought signs from him.
Right.
These people up there are solidly in the other camp, period. I'm not going to feed the hand that bites me.
There you go. I mean, and so what? Okay, you want a candidate, and here's the thing, right? If you only have so many so many campaign dollars to spread around, unless your name is Melissa Butcher, in which case you have several thousand campaign dollars lying around. You've got to be judicious with them. And so if it's Vistaprint, or who really gives a crap where you buy your sign from?
I think Melissa's name is actually
it could be. If you read her website, it's true. All right, so let's look at the actual campaign donations. And Ken, let's start with yours. And if you'll put my screen up here, we'll talk about it. We're going to do a little back and forth here, so keep your finger on the button. So Senate District 21, Ken Pendergraft, you raised $15,600 from individual contributions, including those from Jackson. Good job. I mean, that's a pretty good number, it seems to me.
Well, if you go back and you look at the history of my campaign financing, in the very beginning, there were a couple of Jackson people that looked into who I was and what I stood for and decided I was worth backing. And
Right.
for the next couple of elections, they backed me. Actually, one of them dropped out, and then it had nothing to do with me. She just decided not to give to anybody, and she backed out. And a couple others stood up there. This time, word about me kind of got out a little better.
Yeah, well, you were on the front page of every
Well,
newspaper in the state for 6 months.
And the people there were pretty happy with what I had done. And the sequence is that as a reward for what I had done, they came back and said, "We like what you're doing. We want to support you."
Yeah,
Did I go to them and beg? No, didn't need to.
right. Didn't have to. So you put the graphic back up for me. So now Darren Rogers is complaining about individual donations, but what I want to focus on is political action committee donations. And you can see from the graphic that Ken only got $300 in PAC money. Now, what is a political action committee?
Just a sec.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So you keep interrupting me.
I know. That's my job.
Okay, fair enough.
That PAC is a group of good old boys in Casper, Mikey Thorne and some others that like what we've done. We've been friends for a long time. So I would say that $300, that's the only PAC money I got, is actually very much akin to an individual gift. It's not like a Virginia group of people that have got an axe to grind.
Yeah, no, so, okay, so...
But fair enough.
So the
It is
$300
a PAC.
from the good old boys in Casper. Now, your opponent. So Melissa Butcher, and look, this is a staggering amount of money that she raised. $60,000, $59,553 actually. 12,800 of that came from political action committees. So what is a political action committee? It could be a group of people that get together and they want to pool their money and advocate for a cause. There are several of those across the state. Liberty's Place for You is where that's the political action committee that Ken got the $300 from. Those are just like good old boys that got together, right? A group of people that says we're going to pool our money. Now, most other political action committees are lobbyists. So, for example, the Wyoming Mining Association, the County Clerks Association, the County Commissioners Association, all of those, if it has the word association attached to it, it is a lobbying organization. Now, if we look at Melissa Butcher's campaign financing, she got $12,800 from political action committees. So almost a quarter of the money that she took in is coming from lobbyist organizations. And all of them are the political insiders. Now, you might say, well, wait a minute. This candidate got money from, say, the Wyoming Stock Growers Association. Sounds like a pretty conservative group, right? You should go watch their activities in Cheyenne.
Yeah, Wyoming Contractors Association.
There's another
Same
one,
kind of
right?
deal, yeah.
The Mining Association. They're another liberal group. And all you got to do is pay attention to the bills that they support. It's always bigger government. It's always higher taxes. And so...
It's always more tax dollars going to these companies to prop them up.
Yes, it's almost always tax dollars. Okay, so there's Melissa Butcher. So now let's look at Mr. Ryan Koltiska. Now, Ryan Koltiska is running for House District 30, and he raised a whopping $33,000 in campaign contributions. He also raised $23,900 in individual contributions. However, $8,000 of that, $8,050, came from political action committees. So almost, and it looks about to be the same percentage. Now, and pay attention to the size of the slice on the pie graph. So now let's look at his opponent, Mr. Mark Jennings. Mark only raised $300 from political action committees.
There's a theme there.
There's a theme there. It was probably the same $300.
Almost certainly.
All right. So now, here we go. Here's Micah Sturdivant. Micah Sturdivant raised another whopping $30,000, $30,700, and 25.25% of that came from political action committees in the form of $7,750. So again, in this case, it actually is more than a quarter of the dollars that she raised came from big government associations. And her opponent, you got to show this one, Ken. This is James Temple. Now, just about every advertisement I've seen about him is that he is, he's in the pocket of the Freedom Caucus. He is beholden to these groups. Really? All of his campaign donations came from individual people.
For the first couple of weeks, like 6 of the campaign, AFP
Beat the crap out of you.
not just me, but they out of James and anybody else that was the least bit conservative across the state just hammered and hammered and hammered. And finally, a couple of conservative groups stood up, including the Wyoming Freedom Pack, and they have been pretty vocal of late in pushing back.
Yeah,
And they
yeah.
did. I just wanted to point out they did, in fact, help myself. They helped James and others, if you want to call it help.
I don't know. I mean, it kind of depends.
It came, I mean, I'm appreciative. I really am. But it came after early voting had already been open for a couple of weeks. Some other things were involved there. And I don't know how effective they are when everybody's just completely worn out.
Well, and so that's another interesting one. So we always wonder about the early voting numbers. And the narrative going into this election was that early voting is going to be huge. And indeed, in places like Laramie County, I think Laramie County had 3,000 people that voted early. But in most of the other counties, it's actually pretty small numbers. 300 people here, 400 people there, 500 people there. It's really not the big numbers. And what does that, I don't know that you can, and today of all days, it is like political prognostication day, right? Everybody's trying to divine meaning out of every little detail in an election, including me. But I don't know that early voting really tells you anything, except that, most Democrats tend to vote early. Most liberal people vote early. Most conservatives tend to vote on election day. I don't know that tells you anything, except that
I think that's changing too.
it could be. I know a lot of people that they had trips scheduled to go elsewhere, and they just went and voted early. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that, except I think that our early voting, I think that it really should be constrained to you need to have a reason. And we should try to do most of it in absentee voting. Here's why. If you go to the polls, you got to show your ID, right? And you got to do that at the courthouse too. But all I'm saying is, at least you're in person. You're doing it right there, and there's no reason to vote, several weeks early. And if you do that, you're kind of depriving yourself of information, because often in campaigns, there's something that happens in the last few weeks of a campaign. I can't really point to a big August surprise this time around. There was a sleazy article about Steve Freeze, but there's really nothing to it.
And
But other than that,
they tried to bring back Checkgate and make that a big deal here at the end. That's the best they could do.
well, there was a lot of articles in the Cowboy. This person was connected to Checkgate. I think people are really tired of that. I really do.
As well they should be. You can bet that Captain Showy Pants, the
Captain Showy Pants.
the sheriff down there in Laramie County.
Oh, Kozak.
Everything he does is trying to make a splash or trying to make an impression. He goes and on Facebook on a Saturday night, we're investigating, and then he comes out last week and says,
there's warrants.
There's a leak. He said there was a leak. Somebody let it out there. Anyway, it's all a bunch of double speak. You can bet if there was anything to find, he'd have found it.
Oh, yeah. And it would have been front page news before now. But anyway, my friends, the campaign donations, I think that that's a valuable piece of information. But I don't think that you should read too much into it, except that, and here's another thing that I think that you should be aware of. So if you lose an election, and let's say you've raised $10,000 and in your campaign you've only spent $5,000. By the way, in a political campaign, if you only raise 10 grand and you've spent $5, you're really not campaigning. Maybe you sent out one flyer, but the rest of that money, if you lose, it's kind of up to you what you want to do with it. You can donate it to another campaign. Maybe there's somebody running in the general election that could use a few $1,000s, or you can keep it. And think about those numbers for just a second. Let's go up to the really big one here. Your opponent, Ken. Melissa Butcher. So she raised $60,000. And if you look at her campaign expenditures, she only spent about half of that, which means, and I actually did the numbers, and again, this was like it's a week before. So all this was filed on the 11th. There was probably some campaign spending between then and now. But that number on the 11th, there was $33,000 left over in her account. So at the end of this election, if she's not successful, where does that money go? Well, it can go in her pocket. I think, and I wanted to debate this with you. Okay, maybe it's not a debate, but I don't like that. You know, I think if an individual donates to a political campaign for a specific purpose, I don't really like the idea that that cash can go anywhere or in their pocket. What do you think?
So last cycle, I didn't have an opponent in the primary. I
Okay,
did in the general.
Okay. Yeah, you had a Democrat in the general.
Yeah. So during the primary, I reached out to several people who had given me donations, and ended up traveling the state and helping. I went to help Rachel with a rally or two. We went to Orland and upset some people there because we were carrying a sidearm and we played music too loud.
Yeah.
Several things like that. So this last cycle here, you'll note that there's about I don't know, a little over 3,000 left on mine, and I had an intention of doing one more flyer at the end. And because of everybody was inundated and everybody was sick of it, I didn't do that. So that money sits there. So what do I do with that money? I will probably do another mailer.
Maybe if you win, a thank you mailer.
Yeah, something like that. But I also think if I'm going to be in office for a few months, years, a few years, that money could be used to send a flyer, say, a year or two in, and this is how it's going, that sort of thing. The state does give a whopping $3,000 a year, which is not enough for even one
mailer.
It comes out every quarter. You get $750. Is supposed to help you address or to reach out to your people. Maybe it defers the cost of some fuel to go somewhere and speak or whatever. All those things are there. But that money, as you pointed out capably, that money was given for a specific purpose, and that was to advance the conservative cause here in Wyoming. Right. And that's where that money goes, as far as I'm concerned.
Right. But now let's say, like, if you're a candidate and you're unsuccessful in a race, whatever's left over, I mean, it's absolutely legal that money could go to, go into your pocket. And I don't know that I agree with that. I mean, I guess you could say that it's free speech. Let's see here. All right. So Patrick, okay. So since we're flying by the seat of our pants this morning, go ahead and put that up. So Patrick wants to know, what is the deal with candidates that loan their own campaign's money? Are the loans paid back? If the loan is not paid back, is it, and I can't see the rest of it, does it offset their personal income? Yeah, that's absolutely true. So when you loan your campaign money, you can use your campaign funds to pay it back. I don't know that I like that either. But you're absolutely right, Patrick. I mean, you loan yourself $1,000, and then you get, 10,000 in campaign donations, then you can pay yourself back. I don't really like that either. I mean, it's, I get it, if you're a candidate and you don't have a lot of money, but still, I think that I don't
think
really
the
like
idea
that.
is there's always a lag between when you need the money and when it shows up. So you front that cash knowing that you're going to have donations coming in.
Right.
And then pay that back. And I really don't have a problem with that concept. What I would have a problem with, for example, if Melissa the Butcher was to keep that $30,000 and not pay taxes on it.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that works because it's never come into play for me. So.
Well, I think it's an important question. Because at the federal level, we know that there are a lot of people. Have you ever noticed, Ken, that when there's a presidential election, there's like 30 people that line up and they're all going to run for president, and a whole bunch of them are not going to come anywhere close to it. So you and me might think, why the heck would you even do that?
Well, you start building that war chest.
There you go. You start building the war chest, and as long as you file for the office, at the end of that campaign cash is yours. I don't really like that. I mean, I think that I don't even know how you do it because there's free speech issues there. When somebody donates to your campaign, that's their freedom of speech, their political, their exercise in the political process. But I don't know. I just think it has a really nasty taste to it. I don't like it. But there's a number of those candidates statewide, and I think the numbers I figured out. And I didn't even, honestly, Ken, I didn't look at your numbers because you've pretty much spent all your cash. But in the House District 29 race, there's 17,000 left over. In the Senate 21, there's that 33. Those are big numbers. And I don't really like the idea of being able to profit off of your own failed political campaign. I just don't like it. All right. So let's go ahead and take our second break, and we'll continue with the program when we come back. More election coverage of the 2026 primary. The calendar says that it's summer, and you believe it. Oh, that's just so cute. But you obviously haven't lived here very long, have you? And you probably think that the weather is just going to continue to warm up. You don't have to worry about snow or ice or 30-degree temperatures anymore. In case you've forgotten, this is Wyoming, my friend, and that sort of thinking doesn't work here. 1 minute, it could be 75 and sunny, and 10 minutes later, snow. Whatever the weather, you need a pair of socks that'll keep your feet cool and dry even on the hottest of summer days. And if you happen to run into that spring snowstorm, you'll stay nice and toasty warm. Well, your feet anyway. To get you a pair, go to the website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. These are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. Are you one of those people that said something like this before Trump became president?
I have a house in Spain that is going to be ready right after the election.
Siberia,
Nova Scotia.
I'm definitely moving to Canada.
Straight to hell. Iceland.
France.
Asia's pretty cool.
And has the last year and a half been more than you could bear? Well, if it has, you've come to the right place. Call my friend Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market all across the state of Wyoming. Last year, she sold around $30 million worth of property. Everything from small residential properties all the way up to big giant ranches. So if you've got to get the heck out of Dodge, if you've got to be gone Johnson because you can't stand that Trump is the president, call Rebecca Bextel. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. Let me say that one more time for you in case you missed it. 307-699-3519. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live, on a Tuesday, election day in Wyoming, and I haven't even. Ken, did you look at the?
No.
Okay.
I haven't looked at anything.
That's right. I do show prep. You do not. So I just pulled up Fox News, and there isn't really anything on there about the primaries that are being held today. And it's Wyoming, and I can't remember what the other state is, but I think there's 2 primary elections happening.
That makes sense because they know Republicans are going to win.
Well, yeah.
And from their perspective, a Republican is a Republican is a Republican. So,
well,
there's no
and
story.
as we all know, that is not the case.
Right.
And so there was an article in the Cowpie, and I've actually got it down on. Oh, pardon me. Let me get down to the bottom of the stack of stuff here. And let's see here. All right. So there's a piece in the New York Times about the Senate District 1 race with Augie and Chip Nyman. And they called it, like, the way that they framed it is like the Wild West Showdown. Like Chip and Augie are going to be out in front of the saloon at noon, drawing pistols. It's really not that way. The truth is that Augie has a very loose relationship with the facts, and the guy that's running against him, well, he has done a number of videos online that I think are just wonderfully funny. Instead of hitting him mailer for mailer, what Chip decided to do is every mailer that comes in, he was just going to do a quick little video and talk about it. And as it turns out,
it's a lot cheaper.
Well, yeah, it's a lot cheaper. And according to his campaign, it's been remarkably effective. That like everywhere in that district that Chip goes, everybody loves his videos. But here is what the Cowpie says about it. Republicans on both sides of the pro and anti-Freedom Caucus divide voiced critiques Monday on a New York Times story that dissects one of the Cowboy state's fiercest legislative battles. In the shadow of Devil's Tower, begins the story, an election year fight has erupted between Wyoming's right and its far right, with serious implications for the state's political future. Now, let's just talk about the framing of this article for just a second. The narrative coming from the Cowpie is, well, all these people, they're really on the right. They're all Republicans. They're all right-leaning. But when you look at their policies, you're really not all that right-leaning. Let me just give you one. Take you all the way back to COVID. So Ogden Driscoll was in the Senate, and a bill that would allow hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin to be prescribed by doctors came before the House. It was during the special session. No, it wasn't either. It was during the session. And old Augie voted against it. In fact, old Ogden voted against a lot of stuff that would have protected you from vaccine and mask mandates. Chip Nyman did not. In fact, he gave several speeches on the floor that were they were all about, look what you're doing to people. Like you are forcing them to take a medical treatment when they don't want to. And it was, if you really want to know who these people are, go back and watch that session. It is truly incredible. Now, Augie also has a history of voting for higher spending. It was Ogden Driscoll that voted to take the budget back to what the governor wanted. He's the one that made the motion. He didn't want to look at all of the spending of Mark Gordon. He didn't want to take, any time and look at it at all.
He's also the one that was on appropriations that was part of being able to cut it back about $500 million.
Yep, he was on appropriations.
And he told me personally he was all for taking at least $20 million away from UW.
Yeah, not now. No.
Yeah.
Now he's the savior of
bait and switch
of Wyoming. But the truth is, when you look at the voting record of, and they extensively quote this person named Ember Oakley in this article. Ember Oakley, former representative, voted with the Democrats.
I
almost.
Sure miss her.
Oh, not really, no.
Not.
Voted with the Democrats. The Democrat majority, in excess of 70% of the time. That's incredible. And how do you figure that? Okay, so when I say that number, what does that mean? It means that if the majority of Democrats vote one way and you vote along with them, that is voting with the Democrat majority. Conversely, if the majority of Republicans in the House vote one way and you vote with them, that's voting with the Republican majority. Well, way over 70% of the time, Ogden Driscoll, Ember Oakley, a lot of these jokers, they end up on the left side of the ledger, voting with the Democrats. And it's not hard to figure out. The Cowpie and all these politicos on the left, they try to make it into voodoo mathematics, but it's really not. All it is ones and zeros. Either you voted with these people or you didn't, 1 or 0. That's all that it is. And in a desperate attempt to run away from that record, the cow pie is helping them. Let's continue. The story covers the state Senate race between Wyoming Freedom Caucus member Chip Nyman and upper chambers incumbent Ogden Driscoll. The race is anthemic. Old Claire McDuff has been pulling out the thesaurus lately. I guess she's getting tired of using the same old words, but I do appreciate it, by the way. I am a big fan of thesaurus. Is it thesauruses or thesaurusi? I don't know. All right, so the race is anthemic of the divide between the Wyoming between the Freedom Caucus and its inter-party foes. But it's difficult to capture the nuance of it. No, it's not. One group votes with the Democrats, the other group does not. The story casts non-Freedom Caucus lawmakers as institutionalists, caucus members as insurgents. It touches the caucus-led passage of the 25% residential property tax cut and it airs both ideals of caucus leaders and grievances of their critics. The caucus's priorities, according to Representative Rachel Williams, told the outlet, shrinking government, tightening voting rules, curtailing activist judges, supporting the Constitution, less taxes. I mean, it's not that hard. I mean, really, it is a recitation of everything that you would ascribe to being a conservative. The folks on the other side, well, it's the exact opposite of it. More government spending, more reliance on elitist government bureaucrats, more reliance on lobbyists, and more government services. I mean, it is the classic case of your typical Democrat versus typical Republican. If you were to overlay the what happens at the national level to what happens here, you would have two distinct sides, and that's what we're talking about here. Except that the members of the writers at the cow pie, they refused to see that, or they refused to report on it because they're the beneficiaries of big government, and they're a bunch of big government people anyway. So, I mean, essentially, that's what it boils down to.
So, for the record, the proper term is thesaurus.
Thesaurus, okay.
However, there is a note there that said thesauruses is more commonly used. I can't say I've ever heard anybody use the word at all.
I don't know. I mean, it's kind of the same question if it's geniuses or genii.
Yeah.
I think genii sounds.
Don't let them
smarter.
out of the bottle.
Yeah, don't let it out of the bottle. All right, so we haven't taken a call all program long, and it is an election, so we've got Mr. Steve Freeze on the phone. Steve, welcome to Cowboy State Politics. How you doing this morning?
David, I'm doing great. Just went to the polls myself. Was my daughter's first time voting, and she's been traveling around the state with me on the campaign, and we're excited for the outcome tonight.
Excellent. My parents used to do that too. They would take us along, when we were really young, and they'd take us into the voting booth, and we'd get to ask. They'd ask us, who do you want us to vote for? And I mean, it's one of those things that my sister and I really remember. So how you feeling, Steve?
I'm feeling confident. In the last few laps I've taken around the state, walking through Albertsons, I'm getting fist bumps and people saying they've already voted for me. We won't know until it's all tallied up tonight, but I'm feeling confident and really humbled by the whole experience of, thinking of putting myself at the disposal of the state to do everything I can to make life better for people here. David, as I traveled around, there are a lot of people that are hurting. There are a lot of people that are struggling.
True. Yeah.
And I'm really optimistic that the contacts that I have in DC and the experience that I've have is going to help me to shape policies to turn that around. And primarily that's, my real hope is to kick off the next energy boom in the state. That's just my highest priority.
So this is the first time you run for office, isn't it?
It is. And I really never thought I would do this. And really, I was recruited. And the question came to me not as, hey, do you want to do this? It was, would your family support you if you did this? And that was interesting because it started the conversation with my family first, and they just were so encouraging. And then, I called Harriet Hageman, and I thought the phone went dead. I said, hello.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, Steve, I'm sitting in a hotel room. There's a sheet of paper in front of me with a list of names on it of who can I get to run, and your name's at the top of the list.
Okay.
And I took that as a pretty big encouragement, and it's one of the things that's kept me going.
So let me ask you this. Is campaigning different than what you imagined it would be? I mean, I know it's really hard to figure out, okay, so I'm going to run for office. This is what it's going to be like. But what was the biggest thing that you were surprised by in campaigning?
Well, the first thing that's hard is when you're campaigning, you've got to talk about yourself and talk up your good qualities. And that's, for most of us, that's a really unfamiliar place to be. First of all, public speaking bothers a lot of people, but
Yeah, true.
But it's a lot easier to get up to a microphone and talk about what a great guy Dave Iverson is.
I agree, and you should do that more.
Well, everyone, Dave Iverson is a heck of a great guy.
There you go. All right.
And, but hearing the story about how your parents took you to the voting booth, that's reflected in the way right now you're working hard for good patriotic causes. So your parents done good.
Well, thanks. It's I learned in a couple of races that I'm much better suited to be behind a microphone. But I tell you what surprised me more than anything, I think, is you go into a campaign with a list of things that you want to work on, right? This is the list of important stuff that's happening, in whatever election. And what I found is that the things that you think are important, they're a little bit different than. Sometimes they're a little bit different than what your constituent thinks. They've got some very different worries and some different priorities. Did you have a similar experience?
Well, I discovered early on that folks are really concerned about their access to and the affordability of medical care.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been reaching out to folks in DC, policy people that I know have cared a lot about it since the fight against Obamacare. And I have to tell you, I was a little distressed the other day there. I was saying, so who's leading the charge on repeal and replace? And I got almost, we're just looking at all these trims around the edges and changing this little thing and that little thing. And it's distressing to think that they've had all this time, but the policymakers have been distracted on other things when that is really the core of one of the things we've got to fix in the country, because it's only made insurance companies and big hospital chains rich. It hasn't improved the care. It hasn't made it any more affordable. And it hasn't made doctors richer. Their lives, I think, have gotten more difficult. But particularly in Wyoming, where there are big distances between facilities, I'm optimistic about some of the things in the Big Beautiful Bill on the rural health revitalization portion. But even that, it's going to take a lot of follow through to make sure the dollars get to the right places. But there are some things that are great to see. There's a new hospital going up in Riverton, which I think is, they've been life flighting people out of there for so long because they didn't have the facility that they could really handle things. So it's exciting to see a good facility getting built there.
But Steve, two questions. So first,
yeah, sure.
Don't you think that the repeal, we're going to repeal and replace? No, I'm going to repeal and replace. We're going to try it for the 27th time. We're going to repeal and replace, and they never do it. Don't you think that that's emblematic of the disconnect between what happens here in Wyoming and what happens when people go to Washington, D.C.? How many times have politicians said, we're going to repeal and we're going to replace Obamacare? And like you said, other priorities come up and they never do it. And I mean, for me, that's one of the biggest frustrations. Not necessarily. I mean, the policy's bad for sure, but for me, the biggest issue is, look, you tell people back home. I'm not saying you. I'm saying politicians tell people back home, but we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and then when they get to wherever they're going, whether it's Cheyenne or Washington D.C., that goes out the window, and they work on other stuff. Don't you think that that's the biggest problem right there?
It's absolutely a problem. I think that's when we just look at the way Congress has kind of failed to do its job for so many years. I think when I was on your show weeks ago, we talked about it. It's been 1997 since Congress actually did the 12 separate pieces of the budget bill they're supposed to put together. Everything's been continuing resolutions and stopgap funding bills, and it's going to be a heavy lift to get that mindset to shift. And there's so many things in Congress that aren't done the right way. The fact that everything gets bundled in is a mess.
I hate that.
In our state, people probably know, one bill, one subject. I think Congress should vote on 30 different things in a day, and then you know where you stand on each thing. And it bugs me to think that, should I be honored enough to serve the state? I'd be coming back and saying, yeah, well, I had to vote for all this garbage because it had this one important thing for Wyoming. It just shouldn't function that way. So shaking things up there is a priority. There's I've been warned. It's going to be frustrating, but I'm counting on the people of Wyoming to keep nudging me to stay on track, to stay on the priorities, because that's what I'm going there for. I think most of your listeners know I had no intention of ever running for office, but this window opened. Folks asked me to do it, and I'm really doing this for the state. I've got nothing to gain here. People have pointed out the lunacy of spending this much money to get a job that only pays $175. But I come from a family with a tradition of service and philanthropy, and I'm just looking for, at the other side of hoping with the election win, that I can come back to the state again and again and show progress, show accomplishment, and really work to make life better for people in Wyoming.
Fair enough. So did you discover that, as you traveled around the state, that different parts of the state have very different political leanings? I mean, we're always told that Wyoming's this homogenous place. But did you figure out pretty quickly that different, depending on where you were, the political inclination of that area was very different?
Well, first of all, can we just draw a circle around Teton County and sort of take it off the discussion? It's an entirely different way.
We do all the time, Steve.
It really isn't Wyoming. Yeah, I got to the point where people would ask me, so where are you from? And I'd say, a little west of DuBois, a little north of Alpine. And they got the joke. But pretty much I'd say politically I live behind enemy lines. Other than that, I would have to say what places that I visited, I sensed that there has been a bit of a split around the state, and I've seen it in each zone. Folks that, and I kind of chalk that up to, I think our country's polarized, certainly, and that's the polarization that I think we've really got to be worried about. I'm optimistic that Wyoming's going to figure out how to get along better. We've had this division of, the Freedom Caucus calling everybody rhinos, and the people that aren't Freedom Caucus saying, hey, that's really not fair, and that's going too far.
But,
and I'm just hoping we can get back to working together and get past some of the animosity and things. That's important to me. Because really the problem that we've got, but the problem we've got is at the national level, we've got Democratic Socialists of America. We've got outright communists threatening to destroy the republic. So Wyoming's got to band together.
I agree. I'm hopeful that we can come to a more honest political discussion. And by that I mean, if you look at 2018, there was something like I don't know, 12,000 Democrats that switched over to Republican. And then if you look at this year, there was only about 2,000, give or take a little bit, meaning that most
well, they all did it.
Yeah, they were already in the Republican Party, right?
Right.
And so when you look at the voting numbers of who sides with whom, the division in the Republican Party isn't one of Freedom Caucus versus people who aren't. It's one of people who typically vote with the Democrat majority and the other side that doesn't. And so, I mean, it's an interesting place in that the political divide is more pronounced within the Republican Party. And, it's done strategically because most people that live here outside of the People's Republic of Jackson are generally conservative folks. I mean, we might differ on spending policy here or there, but let's be honest, man, you can't put up with this many months of winter and not be kind of self-reliant. And so, I'm hopeful that we'll have a more honest discussion. That is, okay, let's just be honest about our policies, and let's just have an honest debate rather than, it's, well, I'm a Republican too, because I don't know that that's necessarily all that productive.
Okay. All right. I can see the frame you're putting on that. That makes sense to me. But I guess I just want to see people trying at least a little harder to get along rather than the kind of, some of the name calling that I've seen.
Yeah, I get that. Ken here, he often says that people were a lot more polite, 120 years ago. And the reason for that is, there's a high likelihood you might end up out in the street. And now, we've got the internet, and it's easy to call somebody a name online because you never have to face them. And there was a time where, we could have a fierce political debate, and, you and I, Ken and I do it every once in a while, have a fierce political debate. And at the end, we can say, all right, so where are we going fishing this weekend? But we got to get back to that place. And that part, I agree with you on.
Right. That's a great way to describe it. And, it's one of the things that people have told me about back in the day of Tip O'Neill as Speaker of the House and back in the time of Ronald Reagan, when more people, here's a tension, okay? I want to come back and see my family every weekend, just as Cynthia Lummis did, John Barrasso, Harriet, we're not camping out in D.C., but people have told me that back in that day, people did stay more in D.C., and it actually had them, their wives got to know each other, and so there was a greater level of civility. I just wonder if that's even possible now, because the Democratic Party is starting to really show its true colors.
Oh yeah.
And I just struggle to see what common ground am I going to be able to find with some of these people. I think a Clinton Democrat is nothing like an Ilhan Omar Democrat.
They're just better at hiding it.
Yeah. Well, maybe. No, I don't think. I don't think. Well, I mean, go read some of John F. Kennedy's speeches. They sound more like a President Trump speech every day.
For sure. Yeah.
It's this polarization, and the left has gone so far, and that I think is going to be the big battle facing the country. But I almost hope, to be honest with you, that they go so far that they just, it's like they walk out on the plank and saw themselves off, kind of the way the whole trans movement has done that. I think they took it so far, the idea that a guy could jump in a pool and tie with Riley Gaines and get the trophy. I think that was so clearly nonsensical. I think that as we expose more of what the Democratic Socialists are trying to accomplish, I'm optimistic that people are going to kind of wise up, and we are going to have the silent majority once again kind of rise up and say enough is enough.
No, that part we can agree on for sure. Well, Steve, I got to run, man. But I appreciate you calling in. Good luck. If you're successful, give me a call. We'll do an interview live on the show.
David, I look forward to it. Thanks for giving me the chance to be with you. And everybody get out there and vote. It's a big day.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Steve. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Well, that was Steve Freeze. Very different. I agree with him that, man, we got to somehow get back to being able to have a political debate. Though, the only way that you can do that with the other side is if you have two honest brokers. And, the political divide that we have in Wyoming, I don't think that you have that. I mean, it's like we were talking about before. In Wyoming, we have one side that swears up and down that they're not doing something that they actually are. It's the classic. The left in Wyoming is the epitome of accuse others of what we're doing.
I think there was one other nuance in what I heard from Steve. And that was the idea that most of the vitriol, at least this is how I took it, most of the vitriol is coming from the Freedom Caucus.
That's the undertone.
I profoundly disagree that the Freedom Caucus has set the negative tone. That's the message that's out there, and that's
for sure.
The current side. Well, none of this would have been necessary if you guys hadn't stood up and said government really should be smaller.
And I think, Ken, maybe you might disagree with this, but, knowing all of you guys, you're all pretty, pretty forthright. You call a spade, and often it's, no, you're wrong. Here's why you're wrong, and let me give you 4 other reasons. And the other side is very much not capable of responding. And so those attacks get characterized as you're being mean.
Yeah.
And that's not.
If you actually point out somebody's voting record scientifically, especially if it's Marilyn Connolly,
right,
you're mean and you're attacking. No, we're simply sharing the facts. So there is an aspect of that, and I do think that we tend to be a little bit maybe more direct.
That's the word I was
some of the
looking for.
others who want to couch things and say things without really saying things. I would say they tend to be catty.
Well, and I get accused often of, and you use the word attacking, right? Like I published that article on Marilyn Connolly spending $1.241 billion extra dollars. That's not an attack. That's the truth.
Yeah.
And the truth has no agenda. Thomas Jefferson said that you should question everything, even the very existence of God. You should know things are true for yourself. And when they're not true, you should call them out. And when Ember Oakley stands up and swears up and down that she's a conservative, I should be able to point out, here's the 50 places you voted where you're not. Here's all of the spending. Here's all of the government control. Here's all of the places that you voted for bigger government. Or Ogden Driscoll, or any of them, Albert Summers. Last election, it was the big article that Albert Summers was on the board of a group with direct ties to the Communist Party. That's not an attack. That's not a smear. That's the truth. And when you have people that are actively, advocating for policies that are harmful, that, in my opinion, that are harmful to Wyoming citizens. For example, Ken, you just got back from a healthcare, whatever they called it, task force.
Healthcare affordability task force, and it was hard for me to kind of bite my tongue while Steve was sitting there talking about repeal and replace. I'm all for repeal.
I don't want to replace it.
No,
that's not the role of government.
No. And that's where we're at as a state. Is there's very little we actually can do, but we're trying to find something that we can do. So.
And it's and everybody likes to talk about, at the time when everybody, it was the hitching post in Cheyenne, right?
Yeah.
All the legislators stayed at the hitching post, and it was more collegial in Cheyenne. Well, the truth is they were all playing for the same team.
It was more lubricated, too.
Yeah, that's true. There was plenty more booze flowing around. But they were all on the same team. When a guy like Eli Bebout, who was in leadership in the Democrat Party, can switch parties and become a Republican, and in 2 years ends up being the majority floor leader, that means they're both playing for the same team, because you know that Eli Bebout didn't change his political beliefs.
And as that was going on, basically most Wyoming voters were pretty much oblivious. He's got an R after his name. He must be doing the right thing. It can't be that bad. And it got progressively worse and worse and worse until finally enough of us started to notice, hey, the emperor has no clothes.
Yeah.
And now we're mean for pointing that out.
Yeah, and you know that whole episode I did yesterday, y'all, everybody knows that I'm a history nut, but I found it fascinating going through Eli Bebout's, legislative history, because he really did switch sides to stay in leadership. Because when he was first elected in 1987, the Democrats had a pretty good hold. I mean, maybe they didn't have the majority, but they had several more seats in the House of Representatives. And then he was politically astute enough to realize that the Democrat Party in Wyoming was losing influence, and so he jumped ship so that he could stay in leadership. That's exactly what happened there. And there's lots of examples of that. But we have the media and legislators claiming, oh no, we're all Republicans. We are the conservative ones. And that was done intentionally so that you could muddy the waters, and so that it was difficult for voters to tell who was actually advocating on their behalf and who was on team government.
I'm firmly convinced you flat out have socialists running against myself and James Temple.
I think if you read their campaign websites, that's true.
If you look at it and you read it carefully, those tenets are thick through there. Government is the answer for everything. Mm-hmm. And they're the ones. My opponent is running as a conservative, it's a real conservative. And you look at the bullet points that she puts up, to where words don't mean anything anymore.
Yeah. Well, and it is as plain as, I mean, it's in her own words on her website. That's another one, Ken. I published that article, and it's very clear. There are screenshots from her website where she absolutely says that, and again, it's couched in vague language, but she absolutely says that she's in favor of elective abortions. She says, well, it needs to be between a woman and her doctor. Ergo, totally her decision, right? Well, so then that gets translated to an attack. Well, why are you, and all you got to do is go read some of the comments of some of the folks in up north of Sheridan. There are some people that absolutely are in favor of killing babies. Absolutely. And, it's not a smear. That's the truth. And sometimes the truth hurts. And in politics, man, when you're a liberal, the number one thing that we have to do, any politician, not just if you're a liberal, the number one thing we have to do is point out what the facts are, what they did, how they voted. And that's the only way that we can get back to, having any semblance of a conversation, is if we're talking facts. In any debate, doesn't matter what it is, the very first thing you do is decide on the definitions. In the legislature, Ken, the very first thing you guys do is you decide on the rules. You're setting the rules. You're agreeing to the definitions of what the debate is going to be. Because if you don't have those, you can't have an honest discussion afterwards.
Yeah, if you don't have those, you end up with Calvin ball.
Yeah, exactly. Moving the ball and Lucy ball and, all of it.
Lucy ball.
Yeah,
I remember her.
Oh, yeah, picking up the football but anyway,
I was thinking of Lucille.
Yeah, Lucille Ball. That was funny too. But anyway, it's we got to get back to a place where we're actually talking facts. And if you're the candidate that's going to swear up and down that the facts about your record are somehow an attack, I don't like that at all. All right, so let's take another break, and when we come back, we'll continue with the show. The following ad was paid for by Brent Bean for governor.
This is Brent Bien, a Republican for governor. Wyoming families know what matters: law enforcement, emergency services, and supporting strong schools, agriculture, and energy production. But state government keeps growing while priorities fight for resources. That has to change. We don't have a revenue problem. We have a spending and priority problem. Vote for me on August 18th, and I'll put Wyoming priorities first. I'll return taxes to you, the taxpayer, and make Wyoming number one. Paid for by Brent Bien for governor.
Today's program is also brought to you by Morton Buildings. If you're in the market for any type of building for your property, you need to call Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They're the best in metal building construction, and they've been doing it longer than anybody else around. So it doesn't matter if it's a garage or a barn or maybe something bigger, like a roping arena or maybe a giant warehouse for your business. The two guys you need to call first are Marcos and Jesse. Again, their phone number is 307-674-2532, or you can check them out on their website, mortonbuildings.com.
A free people require the right to keep and bear arms. Because of that, I've been proud to sponsor and co-sponsor several gun bills such as Stand Your Ground and No Red Flag Gun Seizures. I'm Mark Jennings, and I'm running for Wyoming State House District 30. 3 years ago, I carried the Second Amendment Protection Act to passage in the House. We now have one of the nation's toughest penalties, up to a year in jail for an official that's committing unconstitutional gun control. I'm endorsed by the NRA and Gun Owners of America. Vote to uphold the Second Amendment. Vote for Mark Jennings on August the 18th. This message was paid for by Mark Jennings for House District 30. I approve of this message, and you should too.
Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. It's Tuesday, Election Day in Wyoming. Thank you for watching the program. Thank you for everything you do for this program, Cowboys, the podcast, this program, the Open Range Record, which, by the way, there's a couple of really good articles on the Open Range Record. I mean, of course, I think they're really good articles because it's my site. But anyway, they are really good. A couple of them by Don Marquardt. And, you know, it's different political analysis than you're going to get anywhere else. And I'm going to cover one of those here in just a second. But first, Ken, baseball, my friend, it was a crazy weekend. Did you see what the I don't even remember his name, but the St. Louis Cardinals rookie did?
I did.
Wasn't that something?
I did.
3 home runs in his first game, first pitch.
I'm telling you, I think I'd take that ball, that bat, set them on my mantle, and retire.
And I'm done.
I batted 1,000.
Incredible, man. Well, a rookie for and I think his name is Baez, but a rookie for the St. Louis Cardinals. First pitch of his major league career, he knocks it out of the park. And then he did it 2 more times. And I've got a video of it. It's just kind of a compilation, but you can see all 3 home runs. Ken, go ahead and play that for us.
Swing and a high fly.
That was his first pitch.
First pitch in the show. Baez homers. Look at that Cardinal dugout. Swing and a drive down the line. Did he do it again? That ball is gone. He's got 2 homers. Swing, drive, well hit right. Suzuki back. It is gone! It is gone! It is gone! 3 homers for Baez! Major League history at
Holy
Wrigley Field.
cow.
3 different pitches hit into 3 different corners.
Yep.
And they say that hitting, and I completely believe it, that hitting a major league pitcher is the hardest thing to do in all of sports.
It is. You
That
have,
guy's something.
at 90 miles an hour, you have a tenth of a second to decide whether you're going to swing or not. And major league hitters, and you hear sports announcers say, well, he's watching the spin off of the ball. Okay, for you and I, you're like, yeah, bull crap. That thing is running at 90 miles an hour. But it's true.
Yeah, if you're used to watching it, you can train yourself.
Yep. And it's, you'll watch some hitters and they can see the pitch, like right as it's leaving the pitcher's hand, you can see them back out of the box because they know what that pitch is going to do. And sometimes they're wrong, right? Sometimes it's a slider and it looks like it's coming right at them and it swings in over the plate. But to hit a major league fastball is the hardest thing to do in professional sports.
I had one of my great regrets is I never got to do this, but I was friends for a period of time with Goose Gossage's cousin.
Oh, yeah.
So Gary. And Goose was going to be coming into town, and we were going to try to set up a deal where several of us could go up and
try to hit,
stand at the plate and just let him throw some by us and see what that was like. It never came to fruition, but man. And then now they got this new kid. I can't remember something
Skis, yeah.
He's throwing them 104.
Crazy,
It's
man.
Nuts.
When I played Legion baseball, we only had a team for 1 year, but I was the catcher. And, okay, so before anybody asks, I only hit 1 home run, and it was in practice, and I only threw 1 guy out at second base. So, no, I wasn't that great. Of course, every young kid thinks that they're going to be a Major League Baseball player. But anyway, my cousin played for Oregon State. He was a pitcher, and he was in town, and we're like, well, hey, we're practicing, and his name's Andy. Like, why don't you come down and throw batting practice? And that guy, his arm, he was throwing 85, 90. There was a couple of them that I was sure were in excess of 90 miles an hour. I did not enjoy that time behind the plate. That was not fun. I was not a happy camper.
I played catcher for a while, too, in a softball league. And I think the reason they had me playing catcher was I was the only one that could get up out of a squat.
Anyway, so, crazy thing, 3 home runs in 1 game. Absolutely incredible. But, it's one of those things. It's like hitting the lottery the first time in the casino. You should never go back, man, because it's you're hitting the big slot machine.
Got nowhere to go but down.
Nowhere to go but down. Well, that's not true. Baez is a pretty good player, and I'm sure he'll do some incredible stuff. So let's see here. What else can we talk about? Oh, yeah. So there's this article. No, it's this one. Another one in the Open Range Record that I mentioned, and this one, I think I published this last week, but it's called 3 Voter Pools, and Megan Felder has her foot in 2 of them. Of course, the title says Megan Degenfelder, not Megan Felder. But anyway, it's a discussion of where voters are coming from. And, with Barlow, that's pretty easy. Barlow has pretty much captured the left, and I don't think that, any of those folks on the political left in Wyoming are going to vote for Brent Bean. I just don't think that that's going to happen. Now, also, I don't think that if you're a solid Brent Bean supporter, that you're going to vote for Megan Felder either. However, now if you're Megan Felder, she's kind of in the middle of things because she's definitely not as conservative as Brent Bean. That's just not the case, and so her folks are kind of a little bit of both, and so she's going to get some votes from some of the left, and she'll get some of the votes from guys on the right. And then there's a significant population in the state that's right down the middle, and she'll probably get those. But it's an interesting discussion of, where those voters are coming from. Let me just read you the opening paragraphs here. With the Wyoming Republican gubernatorial primary approaching, again, this was last week, perhaps the most interesting question is not simply which candidate is ahead, it's where the votes are coming from. Watching this race unfold, I see three different pools. Brent Bean appears to have the strongest lane among Wyoming's grassroots conservatives. Eric Barlow appears to occupy the more left-leaning Republican lane, with the potential to benefit from Democrats and independents who registered Republican to participate in the primary. And Megan Felder, and of course it says Megan Degenfelder, she appears to be standing somewhere between the two, dipping her toes into both pools and trying to pull enough votes from each to build a winning plurality. Once you look at the race that way, a lot of the campaign messaging begins to make sense. And it's and I think that if you look at the stack of mailers that everybody's received, you can kind of divine that out. So let's go ahead and take another call. This time I got Chuck Gray. Chuck, welcome to the program, my friend. How are you?
Great to be on. Thanks for having me, David.
Of course,
Happy
man.
Election Day.
Happy Election Day. First question, Mr. Secretary of State. Do you think that Election Day should be a national holiday?
I do. I really do. And President Trump has talked about this. I think this is the direction we need to go so that we move away from, these 45 days of just early voting and absentee voting, and in some states has become 70-80% of the electorate. In Wyoming, we've worked a lot to try to get a handle on that. We lowered the early voting period from 45 to 28 days, which I think got us to a better place there. And I think that there's been a widespread consensus that the absentee voting, the security is less, and the Carter Baker Commission talked about that, and so we should really emphasize voting on the day of the election. And as part of that, I think that moving towards it being a holiday is a good policy direction. So.
I think so. All right, Chuck. So, how you feeling, man? You got 12 hours to go?
I feel great. I just really want to thank everybody for their support. Volunteers around the state, all the text messages and the support I'm hearing. We have volunteers across the state getting the word out today, and I feel really good about where we're at. I feel really great about my message, the track record that is there. We've been ahead this entire time. That's why they've been attacking me. I mean, the last week alone, Freeze and the media, they spent over $2 million attacking me and making up things. And then Rasner was doing that before that. And the reason they're doing that is because I have a track record, and that track record is why our campaign has been in the lead from the very start when this campaign started back in December. But I know that people are seeing through the lies. They know that I fought for our conservative values, that I have a strong background in doing that, and I feel really good about where we're at. I just think it's important that the vote doesn't split today, but in our race. But I feel really good about where we're at.
Excellent. Another question I have for you, Chuck. Some of us have been discussing all of the flood of campaign mail we've got. Do you think, and you've been in politics for quite a long time, do you think that all this negative campaigning is going to backfire on some candidates? What's your sense of that? I mean, I've got a ton of flyers from you and Steve Freeze and Reed. What do you think?
Well, I certainly hope that people gravitate towards the record. I have really run a positive campaign. I mean, I changed out one of our ads when the lies, they had this PAC that's being funded by Soros money start to go after me last week, and so I just added our traffic to our spot, our TV spot. Look, this is why they're lying about me, because I have a track record. But other than that, I mean, that's not negative in any way. That's just
right. I wasn't
responding
saying
to
that.
the false attacks. And
asking your opinion.
I mean, just last week there were 12 mailers sent out against me from 3 different PACs, all backing Freeze, all lying, that have been backed up by billionaire dollars, and I just hope it backfires and people see through the lies. Now, look, true reflections of voting records, I think that's that's fine. But the way that they have lied over and over again, and to try to split the conservative vote in the media's case because they're trying to lift up Christensen, I just think that it's the games that are being played are very disturbing, and I hope people see through it. People know that I've been the strongest opponent of woke wind. You know, we went on a 9-month effort to stop this woke wind project in Converse and Niobrara counties, and we got it done. And that's when when Gordon said he wanted to fight me.
Yeah, take
was
you outside.
when we stopped that project. So this whole thing about them claiming that I'm for wind, I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, just 6 months ago, the governor wanted to fight me because we successfully stopped wind. Same thing on the data centers. I'm the only member of that State Board of Land Commissioners that has voted against data centers. As Wyoming Secretary of State, I'm the one trying to get the law enforced so that this referendum gets on the ballot, while the city council in Cheyenne is trying to go against the will of the people and stop it from going on the ballot.
So Chuck,
and I've been the strongest secretary.
Not to interrupt you on that. So I saw a couple articles this morning. Can you just describe what exactly is going on in Cheyenne with these data centers and the petition or whatever it is?
Well, petitioners collected signatures to put a referendum on the ballot to reverse this annexation of some land in South Cheyenne that is part of a huge data center development. And then this is part of the sort of deal that the city's trying to carry out, where they annex this land, and it's part of their data center strategy to plop down these monstrosities that are AI data centers. So citizens are saying, let's put this on the ballot to reverse the annexation. Under Wyoming state law, they can put a referendum on the ballot if they attain the necessary quantity of signatures. And that referendum can reverse an action of the council. Title 22 makes that very clear. Now, the council last week has attempted to circumvent that process and try to make this ticky-tack argument to a judge to not even evaluate if they have attained the necessary amount of signatures. So I sent a letter and am evaluating next steps in getting the city council to comply with the law. Unfortunately, I mean, the city clerk does have some authority over this, so we're evaluating next steps in getting compliance with the law. But this is sort of the same old tactic that we've seen from the insiders and the left, which is to try to create these ticky-tack arguments to circumvent the will of the people, and we're not going to allow that. And that's why I've been attacked, is because I have a track record of stopping the insiders, stopping the media from their schemes, and they call me names for that. They say they call it nasty. It's not nasty. It's about accountability,
right?
And it's really important that I think that is remembered here, that in order to get things done from a conservative perspective, to break the control that the insiders and the media have had, it requires action. And that action, there's a reaction to it by the media, and they use their names and they try to paint that person as nasty, but it's not nasty. It's about accountability. And that's what this is about.
Yeah, and just a little bit ago, before you came on the program, Ken and I were talking about, the truth is not an attack. The truth is the truth. And, the one tactic of, you call them the insiders, I call them the redcoats, but it's the same group of people, is to say that when conservatives speak the truth, well, somehow, that's an attack or that's a smear. Because the left, they don't generally attack policy. They attack people. And, it's the job of conservatives to say, no, man, you guys did this wrong, and you got to follow the law. And that deal down in Cheyenne, Chuck, I mean, I think that is stereotypic of what insiders try to do. The people say no to something, and they try to figure out a court, go to a judge and figure out a way around it. So, Chuck, you've got about 8 people in the race. I know you're pretty confident. How do we, one of the questions I've been hearing recently is, how do we get some sort of runoff election in the state? How could we possibly narrow down the 8 or 9 people you have running in your race to 2 or 3?
Yeah, there's different statutory ways to do that. We've supported proposals to do that. The legislators didn't pass those bills. We really advocated for those, but ultimately it's going to take legislative action.
Okay. Next question. So when you win, if you are successful in this election, what's the first thing you're going after?
I am all about protecting our Wyoming industries. We have got to break the permitting hold that the left has on the powder. This judge from D.C. that is blocking our permitting for oil and gas wells in the powder. The Congress can circumvent that and remove that judge's jurisdiction. And then with coal, we got to get access to markets for our coal. I've worked on this issue a long time, but the Congress has a lot of power to say to these West Coast states to stop the nonsense, to block their out-of-control, unconstitutional blockade on our access to markets. And then we got to bring back country of origin labeling, and we got to break the meat packer monopoly, the foreign meat packer monopoly that has done so much damage to our producers, done so much damage to our farmers and ranchers. And we've got to remove every single last woke wind subsidy. They've got to go. And that's how we nip this woke wind industry, quote unquote, in the bud, is we remove all of the subsidies.
Excellent. Well, I completely agree with you. You know, I'm in favor of like everybody being on the same playing field. You know, I don't care if you're a coal company or you think that you're a wind company or whatever, but everybody needs to be on the same playing field, and we certainly shouldn't be giving taxpayer dollars to dubious businesses that want to create synthetic jet fuel or whatever the heck that thing was.
Yeah, it's a Rube Goldberg nightmare. And the other thing we got to do is stop these foreign adversaries, China, North Korea, and others, from taking advantage of our laws, of our country. And I've been the strongest Secretary of State in the nation on stopping, on killing, which is what dissolving these entities are. It's basically killing these entities when China and North Korea attempt to incorporate and take advantage of our laws. I've been the strongest Secretary of State in the nation, and it's incredible. It should be deeply disturbing how the media, how Rasner and Freeze, this alliance they've created, they've spent $2 million lying about this and trying to make it the opposite of what it is, which I've been the strongest Secretary of State in the nation working with the FBI in stopping and dissolving, meaning those entities are killed. They're killed. Any entities that China and North Korea attempt to plop down. And I want to bring the expertise as a former Secretary of State on stopping these foreign adversaries from committing fraud to the United States Congress, because our federal agencies, the State Department, they have to have the authority here to go after these foreign adversaries and these foreign entities. And the lies from the media, from this alliance of Rasner and Freeze, have been very disturbing on this. And please don't buy the nonsense, because it is absolute nonsense.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of that going on, and it always happens in elections. So last question, Chuck, and then I got to run. So where are you spending the election? You down in Cheyenne, or are you in Casper? Where are you hanging out today?
Well, I'm at the Capitol because the Wyoming Secretary of State, Title 22, administers Title 22, which is the election code. So we're monitoring the situation here, and we will be doing that all day. So I'm doing the job here, and I always do. I'm 24/7, 365. We have volunteers around the state, but also are working to administer Title 22 uniformly.
Yeah, well,
across our state on this election day.
Yeah, man, there's a couple of counties that I'm a little bit concerned about. One of them happens to be the county that we're in right now. So good luck, and hope to see you in Congress, man.
All right, thanks, David. Appreciate it, and really want to thank everybody for their support. It means a great deal, and thanks for having me on.
All right, Chucky. All right, so Thanks. All right. So that was Chuck Gray. Well, Ken, we've had two of the congressional candidates on the show today.
We have.
Yeah. I mean, I've been, I didn't mean to keep the cow pie up here.
Aren't we something?
Yeah, well, they've had all the gubernatorial people, so.
No, it is interesting. And, I endorsed Chuck right out of the gate, and I have never for a second regretted that. So.
Yeah, I've always liked Chuck. And one thing that I thought about asking him, but it was actually Chuck Gray in the House of Representatives that filed the bill to try to force Governor Gordon to deal with the coal export port. And if you don't know what he was talking about there, is Wyoming, everybody should know there's no oceans anywhere close to Wyoming. And so we have to have a way to export our coal out of here. All right, so load coal on trains and it goes to various parts within the contiguous United States. But to get it overseas, you got to have a port. And several years ago, when Chuck was still in the House, I can't remember if it was Washington or Oregon, but one of them shut down our coal export port. And it was Chuck Gray that filed the bill to try to force the governor to go deal with the coal export port. Now, he vetoed that, calling it a problem with the separation of powers. Actually, the only interview that I've had with Governor Gordon, I hit him up on that, and he kind of bristled a little bit. And since then, and I'm sure this isn't the reason, but I haven't had another conversation with him. But what Chuck was talking about is tremendously important. Like, we have to be able to export our resources. And it's not just coal, liquid natural gas, trona, soda ash, all of those industries have to have a way to get our goods to market. And if we can't get them, out of port, well, then, they just sit here. Or we have to deal with markets in the U.S. and, in the contiguous, the lower 48. But anyway, super, super important. All right, well, Ken, we pretty much come to the end of another busy broadcast 2 hours. It's election day. I say we call it good for today, and we'll go
have
vote.
Have our own little brief holiday. Is that what you're after?
Well, it's not really going to be that brief of a holiday.
No.
It's a holiday at all. We're going to be busy all day long. But if you haven't figured out a way to go vote, make sure you do that. Go find your polling place. There's a great website on the great page on the Secretary of State's website. If you don't know where to vote, you can put your address in there, and it will tell you. It'll tell you your precinct and, which races you're going to vote for. So just please go out and vote. In Wyoming, only half the population is eligible to vote. And only half of those are actually registered. And only half of those actually go vote. That's an alarming statistic, my friends. And this is the one time that you actually get a say in how your government operates. You get a choice to if you want candidate A or B and who you want representing you in the House and the Senate and in Washington, D.C. On Saturday, I did a podcast showing you how much money your vote is, at least how much money politicians think that your vote is worth. And in your district, Senate District 21, the number of votes to win, at least in the 2022 election, the amount of money that's been spent this year, you could buy every single one of those voters a steak dinner. Maybe not a T-bone, but maybe a lesser sirloin. But you could take all of those voters.
Chicken fried steak.
Yeah, maybe. Well, $28 is what the number worked out to be. But that's how much money. That's what politicians think that your vote is worth. And you should think that it's worth far more than that. And so don't sit at home today. The way that Democrats get elected in Wyoming, especially the redcoats, is when conservative Republicans don't show up. Get out and vote, my friends. And
if you sit at home and Wyoming turns blue,
it's your fault, and I'll never let you forget it.
Responsible.
All right, my friends. Well, that'll do it for today's election episode from the base of the Bighorns. I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. See you tomorrow, my friends. Well, no, we probably won't. I got to go to the county commissioner.